Hello and welcome. I'm Mandy McReynolds, Chief Sustainability Officer and Head of Customer Advocacy at Workiva. I'm joined today by Mike Rost. He is our Head of Investor Relations and Chief Strategy Officer. Now, January has come in, well, like you can see around us, a little bit like a storm, where we've had a lot of activity both in the market as well as Davos in Switzerland. Right now, Mike is joining us because you, Mike, had recently Where the Leaders Get Strategy Wrong when it comes to AI that was featured at the World Economic Forum.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
that was a great event.
It was wonderful. And we also have the Workiva Executive Benchmark Survey that just dropped for all those listening in here on LinkedIn. And so we really wanted to unpack for you, what are we seeing in the market among chief sustainability officers, chief financial officers, investors, and how we might be tackling that in 2026?
Yes, a lot to talk about.
Lots to talk about. So let's dig right in with some 5 areas that we're seeing in the market today and hearing from our customers. First, we believe that fragment data is truly a problem. It hasn't gone away.
Yeah, I mean, data's been the fuel for a lot of things, whether you're talking about BI, business intelligence, or whether you're talking about AI, which people are talking about now. So data is the fuel, and you have to have the right data to really make this work well.
And what we found within the Executive Benchmark Survey, which I think is interesting from your perspective, 95% of almost all investors agree that leaders are underestimating the risk of fragmented data. So I guess coming from the investor relations perspective, Mike, what do you think is critical for CFOs, CIOs, and chief sustainability officers to be thinking about when it comes to this fragmented data issue?
Yeah, I mean, for communicating to investors, it's really about having that investor grade data and the right data that you can really rely on to communicate the accurate story to the market. I think from managing your business internally, from a CFO perspective, that is also, critically important to make sure you have that data that you can make those proper business decisions on. So clean and consistent data is incredibly important.
Now, one thing that I thought was interesting as I looked at the year-over-year data is a lot of talk over the last year and a half around regulators and the change in regulation. But every single year for the last several years that we have surveyed thousands of executives, they've all come back with the same response, that regulators are actually not their top priority. It's their investors, it's their customers, and their employees. And that is who they are looking at for both the long and short-term risk. What is your take as we think about stakeholder engagement and thinking about those key constituents to drive the market forward?
Yeah, I mean, operating a business is difficult when you have very dynamic environments, whether it be regulatory, geopolitical, or other things that may be going on in the world. It becomes much more difficult to manage your business. So yes, you need to be agile. You need to have systems that enable you to be agile, right? Organizations are focused on growth and growing their businesses. Yes, operational efficiency is also important, but that growth and growing your business and sustaining your business is very critical.
Now, I think this was an interesting topic while we were spending time in Davos. Many people were asking your take on this topic because 94% of most institutional investors prefer companies to disclose more, not less often. So talk to us about what is your perspective of that as some conversations are happening around this?
Yeah, I mean, and for those that are U.S. listed companies, there's been this topic of very potential move to semi-annual reporting, and as it's been described, to be an optional thing for organizations to pursue. Many people we talk to are focused on, I want to raise capital, I want to access more investment, and yeah, I mean, it's true that never have we heard investors say they want less disclosure. So for us, it is in serving our customers, making sure that they have the right tools to provide the right information to go out and get investment in their companies.
I think it's interesting both as we kick off the year, we spend a lot of time. You and I spend hundreds of hours talking to thousands of customers. And we talk to both CFOs and chief sustainability officers. And we're still hearing from the market that non-financial data matters. In fact, last year, 3% of companies, based on the survey, didn't even, were only 3% were the minority that reduced disclosures in this area. As well as 96% said, hey, when we look at a unified data set from a leadership perspective within the office of the CFO and the chief sustainability officer, we are driving better business outcomes. So how are you seeing the C-suite coming together around their data strategy?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, financial information obviously is incredibly important. The non-financial, which is oftentimes operational data, right? Whether it's sustainability related or other operational data, that is all critical to telling your company story and telling the market, where is your opportunity and where is your risk and where are you growing and maturing as a business.
Now, you and I were traveling together, and we were saying you can't go anywhere without the conversation to move to AI and financial transformation. In fact, it's filing season. We have been using our intelligence,
Yeah.
right? And as we're traveling, doing work, and we found ways for it to help us operate. So we've heard everything from there's going to be on a $10 billion company, one CFO with 40 agents running that entire company, to we need to have a more human first strategy. What are the key themes you're hearing around AI?
Yeah, at the time at the Davos World Economic Forum, it was a primary topic. You could walk down the promenade, and every tech company was talking about AI in one form or fashion. And there's really three things that I took away from that event. Right, first, yes, people are talking about agents. They're talking about automation, and it was one of the themes that kind of came forward in 2025. But balancing that out this year was a lot of focus of what was kind of called human in the loop or human interaction with AI. And I think that is incredibly important, right? As we look at serving our customers, right, there are lots of humans and there are lots of loops. Not every loop, not every workflow business process is maybe, going to be the one that be AI forward. Yes, there are many others that are going to be automated by AI, but it's not going to be everything. Now, accelerating that work with humans, I think, is going to be an important part of that. And the third theme that was talked about in almost every session was how do we really upskill and enable, the workers, the humans involved in this process on AI. So one of the topics that was talked about was moving from AI literacy to AI fluency. It's not just about being, kind of familiar with AI. How is AI part of your primary, second language that you speak inside of your business? And those that are being successful at it have really enabled their employees in true fluency, not just literacy.
Well, I think one of the things that both the chief sustainability officer and chief financial officer and I were talking about is when you look at it from a job to be done and how is that coming into the financial transformation project, we're seeing use cases right now in reporting season using this intelligence, saving teams 40 to 50% time so that they can actually move towards that critical work of the job to be done and kind of being that human in the loop, double checking the work because there's still so much going on when we think about the data and the underlying data because the World Economic Forum released a study around the global risk report. And what they found was AI is changing risk, both in the short term and the long term, particularly around misinformation. So, how do they need to think about our data strategy differently, knowing that that is the underpinning of AI?
Yeah, so I think a couple things there, right? First off, when you look at, what the LLMs are doing right now, right? Even in the best case, there's the talk about maybe 95% accuracy, right? When again you look at investor grade information, right, there is no room for randomness or misinformation or hallucinations there. So how do you then utilize humans to validate and make sure that you have that right, mix there? Now, if you have bad data fueling AI with not 100% accuracy on the models, that exacerbates the problem, right? So data becomes that fuel. Having the right quality data really fuels having the right outcomes that you'll get from an AI strategy.
100% agree. It's not a tech problem, it's a trust problem
Correct.
as
Correct.
we kind of move forward. So, Mike, as we close this out, as we look ahead to the next 11 months, what is your one piece of advice for executives out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is here. AI is going to be part of our environment from this point forward. I think first and foremost, it is really engaging your employees and figuring out how do you change the DNA essentially of your company on where AI is. And part of that is both enabling experimentation, curiosity becomes a very important skill set, yet also putting the governance around those processes. So it's kind of this mix of, you know, experiment, innovate, fail fast, figure out what works best for your company, and then come up with that overall AI strategy that works, for your specific business.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for your leadership and giving us a global perspective as we look to tackle the challenges of both data and AI in 2026. Everyone, thanks so much for joining us. And if you want to check out the report, check out the comments and the link, and we'll be sure to give you more information about the trends to come.